Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as written? Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as written?
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes as written? Do
Yep.
I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Do we have any I don't see any public comment. Oh, Joel, go ahead.
As a new member of the public, just wanted to note that it's been an absolute privilege to be the council liaison with the Park and Rec Committee for the last 7 years. It's the one aspect of it really enjoyed. So I thank you, and I don't plan to go anywhere. I'll be a regular member, a regular public citizen, and perhaps comment from time to time as we go forward. So thank you for your support and for all the time you put into helping us have a better park and rec system in Scappoose.
I just want to say I really appreciate all the time that you've been here and your consistency with coming here and your passion for parks. I'm so glad that you've been a part of this for the past 7 years.
I'd like to ask the city, what does that mean for us? Will we get a new council liaison appointed?
So at this point, what's going to happen just process-wise for all of it really quick so everybody just understands. The next council meeting, the mayor declares a vacancy. Council will solicit applications for the spot. Council will look at them and vote to fill the position because it's over 100 days before the next election cycle. Most likely, we haven't got any indications on next yet, but most likely what will happen is the mayor will appoint a liaison either now or after the new members elect. Whoever does get elected by the council will have to run for election though in the next.
All right. So on to old business. This is kind of newer business. We have a new member, Michael Sykes. Welcome.
Hear me? Okay, good. Well, thank you. I'm really honored to be on this committee. I've admired the work you've done. Developing Scappoose Park. That I think we've got a lot of work ahead, and I'm glad to be here to kind of pitch in and help you.
We're glad to have you. Thank you. Parks Committee composition requirements.
So it was just asked of one of the members to kind of review briefly what currently the mayor uses to make decisions about how to appoint people to the committee. The mayor wants to limit our committees right now to 3 members from outside the city as voting members. The same requirement doesn't necessarily apply to liaisons. And the other remaining members can be from inside the city. But again, you know, that's the mayor's purview about how he chooses to appoint people. So that could change at any time.
Oh, I would just add, if you guys are thinking about folks who might be eligible, because I think we have 9 spots and still in our bylaws, and we've got how many seated in that?
7 voting members and 2 liaison or 2 alternates, and we don't have any alternates currently. So there's 2 alternate spots.
As you guys are thinking of folks that might be good candidates to serve, please be mindful of the thin city limits out of city.
City updates.
Yeah, aside from, let's see, in terms of public works, again, we're starting to get some nicer weather poking out. Other than that, nothing too major related us. I guess if you have, committee has any questions about anything public works or parks related, particularly, I'd be happy to take a gander at answering them.
So I have a question. Have you guys been able to look through the revised ARPA funding guidance and come to some conclusions about how it could be applied to parks and amenities?
We're going to council for that. It's the end of March, is when we're scheduled, or is it 7? Would need to check and get back to you. In terms of using it for parks usage, I don't see things that have changed too dramatically in the final rule on that note, although I will qualify that statement that I'm not the city attorney. His interpretation is matters here, not mine. So I'm going to let that conversation play out with.
So if we have a lot of examples, other cities have used money towards parks and amenities, do we just, is it best to just provide that like comment? And share what's the best?
Again, with the committee can decide to make whatever recommendations they so choose to the city council. Public comment is also the other vehicle to do that. So I will get back to you in terms of when specifically that date that ARPA is going to come back before council. We've got it as a work session for the next ones. They're not going to make any decisions in terms of allocating funds to specific projects. That will come at either the next or a later meeting, depending on how far council makes it through allocating those funds. At this point, there's still time for them to be allocated. We're not running up against a deadline anytime soon. Half the fund, just over half the funds have been appropriated by council already. That's where it stands today.
So what's the balance, just roughly?
About 700,000.
And okay, so just final question on that. So if they're having their work session, best to provide them with that information for consideration during the work session as part of the menu of options, or?
In terms of speaking from a committee's recommendation or like public comment?
I guess offering examples. So I guess really questioning the interpretation.
I'd say as much in advance as possible to get it before in the packet and make sure that council's aware of it. And providing public comment at that meeting or showing up at the meeting, I think would be the way to go about that.
So this isn't an agenda item, but I will go ahead and put this together and to decide whether that's offered to council kind of as a committee product, or I'm willing to just offer the product. I guess we can make a decision about that. But then if others would like to help kind of assemble a list, look at examples of how other communities.
Great.
In regards to old business, it has here that the pickleball courts were working into the budget. So I don't know if anyone had a chance to listen to the city council retreat, which is on YouTube. This is their February 12th goal setting retreat. But that subject came up, pickleball courts in general, but something a little larger that does affect us. I think I'll just like to make it public. So in episode 3 of 4, at the 1 hour, 10-minute mark, it was discussed about the pickleball courts, and the city council determined that we really shouldn't be working on any projects until the park master plan is completed. I believe you attended, Isaac. Is that what you heard as well?
That is what the recording says, and council is going to be finalizing their goals officially on 2nd. So between then and now, I don't have any lines on anything happening. I don't really know. That's between the consultants and the city council. Also, that is what's recorded.
So if you could help the uneducated like myself, so the working session was just a working session and actually because it's working, it actually is still in flux?
Correct. So work sessions, there is no decision, in a work session by public meeting law, decisions can't be made. So it's a time for debate and conversation. So no official decisions were made at that time, but that's when they do go through and talk about everything. So the official decision will come later when they finalize their goals. That will be an agenda item coming up. Like I said, I think it's the second meeting in March.
Because, we have many things planned for the year, and if indeed we have to really do the master plan first, does our committee want to address this, or?
Can I consider, I mean, isn't this like under new business or?
Well, it was under old business because it was regarding the pickleball reports in the budget.
Okay.
I just made it, so at this point, we can leave it.
Well, okay, so, I mean, since this is brand new information, that I haven't heard, we can potentially make that as an agenda item. We can see how it goes with council, but with the parks, with the master plan, the problem is we need the budget for the master plan to create that. So what could potentially be our next steps if they say they want to save it for the master plan?
So in terms of the master plan, assuming that council approves that as a council goal, the city would create an RFP like we would for anything else, allocate a budget, do the process to hire the consultant to create the documents and work with whatever the TAC would be, which most likely would be this committee. And so for the committee, there probably wouldn't be a whole lot directly on the master plan quite a while until the RFP runs and the consultant selected and work. Whatever happens between now and then could be used to inform work on the master plan. But there's not going to be a direct writing of an RFP likely involved or anything like that.
Then the master plan development process is
No.
I would think a year at most.
Can I just interject, Yul? Because I was actually here for the first master plan, the last master plan that we did, and we worked with, who was the great intern? He's so good. You're all great.
I
But
believe that was Ben Tolles, I believe.
yeah, anyway, so we really got, it was kind of like we did we went through a process where we, had a big board and people put up ideas and then kind of distilled it from there. But I think it only took like 3 or 4 months to do it.
Well, I will, there's a large caveat to that, and that
Yes.
the Parks, Trails, and Open Spaces plan was developed in-house,
Right.
with not by a consultant team, unlike, say, a more technical master plan, for example, stormwater master plan, water system master plan. Those have a very high degree of technical information in them, so they take longer and require a larger team of engineers, hydrologists. In parks, I envision that entire process not taking more than 12 months once the consultant begins that work. In terms of how long the procurement process takes, typically for an RFP can be 2 to 3 months. It just depends, on how long that procurement is open, what consultant availability looks like, and how long it takes to negotiate a price after a high scoring proposer has been identified.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say the first master plan was developed, and a big part of the input came as a result of a annual town meeting where we had 150 people show up, share with us what they thought about the plan. And so it was owned by the public. It's what, 6 years old, 7 years old?
Yeah.
2017.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's a number of those projects that still haven't been finished. See, Chapman Landing was in it to be up on the hill. And so, but anyway, I guess my point is, I thought it was staff driven. I think Alex had a do, and it was pretty well done. So
I've read it many times. It is well done. I guess the point is maybe we'll just go back to the chair and say, just direct us and tell us what you want to do with that information.
Well, so I mean, a couple of things. Like I can definitely understand wanting to wait until we have like a whole picture. But then there's a concern of like how long are we putting things on hold? Second concern that immediately comes to mind is that for the Grabhorn parcel, that is something that we did vote to have in that. And now after kind of looking at veterans and Grabhorn, we think that maybe pickleball court might be better for in veterans versus in Grabhorn. And so if that seems to make better sense long term, like it's unfortunate to put that off longer when it's something that's in kind of really in high demand from the public that we had already voted to put in the Grabhorn parcel, and that's not necessarily being delayed for the master plan. Those are just my thoughts.
can't we just build it? I mean, just curious, why can't just room up on the top there for such?
I do believe the pickleball courts are in our formal, the formal set of goals that we're putting forward to city council, right? And so that's the package of goals that they're going to consider March 2nd.
You want to talk about the goals, Mark?
I don't know if pickleball.
Yes.
Oh, for the ARPA goal.
Well, they were, their
Committee goals.
committee goals is what they were going over.
So during the work session, the way that the council has expressed to us that some of the goals that were put forward are accounted for in the current draft goal list, are that a lot of them are being nested underneath the master plans. So you listen to the council session, Paul's correct. They wanted to wait for any more new park improvements until the master plan was done. That was what they were talking. That's all they were talking about. So a lot of the various specifics, council has kind of moved underneath that parks plan along with about 7 or 8 other specific goals from the goal list. At this point, again, still a draft. That's how that basically shook out, was those were kind of drawn in. That their vision, I can't speak, but if you listen to it, you can hear what they're talking about and the way they envision the master plan guiding parks development. And I would posit that their purpose is to make sure that they're looking at the system as a whole instead of looking at one project.
And that makes sense. That makes sense. I think the concern is that things will just get pushed and delayed. So I would say probably the initial concern that I have is that something that we're kind of excited for, that we would see as a great community win, will get pushed back pretty far.
There has to be a mechanism for balancing the immediate needs that have been identified that go to broad base of residents also
Yeah.
long term.
Yeah.
How does then the Parks Master Plan fit in with the 50?
That's part of why we were hoping that this project would be running simultaneously, because the ultimate point of the 50-year plan is to make sure that all of the various developments that are going to happen, housing, industrial, parks, schools, all these places that need space to grow as the city grows, all those considerations are taken into it. One part of the 50-year plan is to look at the master plan, look at what projected needs for that or set of amenities might be. As the 50-year plan is developed, eventually into urban growth boundary examinations, that the needed amount of land is taken into account so that when we eventually propose urban growth boundary changes to the state, accounting for that. So we're not assigning this plan here or this plan here. We're just making sure that we have the ability to expand as growth happens. So as the Parks Master Plan is getting developed and done, that data starts coming out about what needs are or what projections are. That information will go back to the 50-year plan group through whoever the liaisons are, public comment through open houses, and the 50-year plan stakeholder advisory committee will take that into account as they're working through it and as council is working, ultimately approving.
So I've got two thoughts. So what would be our, so like, in order to convey this to council that we think this is something that should be maybe completed before the master plan is completed, what would our options be?
So you can always make a recommendation,
Mhm.
give all those to council. You could come and make public comment at any point as a citizen or as a member of the Parks Committee. That's open for anything. That I think would send emails to your counselors as a member of the committee or as a member of the public way. And if we had a liaison, you would kind of use them as an interface. It's kind of the idea of that position. So
Okay, and then, like, thank you. And then my second question is going to be to the committee. Joel, go ahead.
For public comment. So there's nothing to say that you find a good spot for a couple pickleball courts,
Uh-huh.
build them next week, and they are incorporated into the master plan. The city can do anything basically they want.
Yeah.
That's certainly an option.
Uh-huh.
That could be presented to council as well.
Mike?
I was just gonna say, it seems like we could do some stuff. You know, the 50-year plan, I think, is fabulous. The city's doing that. That's really important because we don't even know where we're gonna put a new school in the future. And we're really kind of constrained. Don't know where we're gonna have other industrial land and housing, so, and parks. And unfortunately, that was an issue that cities tried to fix by adding parks. So I think it's great that you're gonna revisit the master plan. But I don't think that it should preclude any of the stuff that's already going on. Some of the other parks, it just seems like we can do more than one thing at a time, I think. And I guess the last thing I would say is I don't know where the Avon project is, but basically my biggest concerns is that paid $750,000 for that property. That's good for a 50% match to make improvements to that property. And there's a window of only so long, I think 3 years. And I hate to sit on our hands and miss that significant resource because the city, well, they rarely have I mean, you got 9 other duties to do besides parks. And so we're really limited on money. And if we don't leverage grant dollars when we can, we're really going to regret it. So I don't know what the future of that particular project is either, but I would hope that we wouldn't lose that opportunity.
Right.
Anyway, I hope I didn't get off course, but that's my thought.
Join the club.
I would agree. So then my, I guess the second point that I want to make to the, not just thought, just I want to bring this up there to the committee is, you feel like there would be any benefit in holding off until, which I think we've already answered the question, in holding off until the master plan has been done? Do we get more data? Do we see that we need 7 pickleball courts and we want to have a specific space for them? Like, is there any reason that we wouldn't want to just go all out on trying to make this pickleball happen? I just want to present that to everybody, ask, and see if anybody has comments.
You know, I think one of the concerns that I have, and I understand that there are some people that are very passionate about pickleball, but I do see it as a limited activity for people. And so once again, I just kind of come back to what do we use parks for to serve the greater good? You know, and in my opinion, in my experience, it's hiking, it's outdoor activities, it's playgrounds for children, you know, and you know, sporting venues like soccer and those other things. So, and the other issue is that it's the money. You know, as Mike made a really great point, right now, all the things that are happening are through grants, which is time consuming, and you don't know if you get it. If you really want to have a master plan and have it work, you have to have the funds to do it. And so the way that you do that is you create a Parks and Recreation District for the city of Scappoose, and you create a tax base, but you have to have a plan to sell, to actually make that happen. The reason why the 3-cent tax was passed was because there was a reason to actually pay that tax. It wasn't like, here's a fuel tax, can you vote on this? It was like, no, we need to improve our roads, we need to improve our sidewalks. Here are specific things that need to happen. And I think that's the effort that's actually going to make stuff happen.
Right.
I've raised a lot of money and I know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, I think all of this stuff is great, but it's very frustrating because there's only a certain amount of money available, and we don't even have a parks department.
Right.
If we would simply take the time and create a Parks and Recreation District and have it be to where people will vote for it because it's going to benefit them, then you can actually hire somebody in the city to run parks. You could do all these things that, and I think that's one of the frustrating things about doing a master plan. We spent all that time and effort to do the master plan, but it's like creating a business plan. If you don't have the money, it doesn't matter. It's about the money. And so it's like, if you focus on that, then all these other things will happen. And if you don't, then we'll continue to have discussions about it for a long time.
Right.
And I'm happy. I am happy to help work on doing that.
I think that at another time, that is probably I think it's one of the goals that needs to happen. So back to the pickleball courts, would there be any reason at this point in time that could see a benefit in waiting for the master plan? Okay, perfect. I just wanted to bring that up, see if anybody had any thoughts about that. Then I think we should go forward with making a council recommendation that we would like them. We feel like it's an absolute need that we, through our surveying, found that to be an important process or an important entity, and we would like to see it happen before. I think it's a low cost and it's a big win. Okay, moving on. Liaisons. So,
Were you intending to make a motion?
no, not necessarily. So,
Be clear for the record.
okay, thank you. But I think one of us, like, I could just go and just make a personal recommendation because I think we've actually already made, we at least made a recommendation for the ARPA funds. Made a recommendation for pickleball courts for the Grabhorn parcel. We've made it for ARPA funds. So, I mean, we could make a third one as as just the committee, or I mean, we can individually go and say this is important. So, what is everyone's thoughts?
I think if you motion and pass it, it shows that,
Yes,
say you got a history of.
twice so far. So, so I guess what do you guys think would be the most impact at this point?
Making public comment.
Yeah.
So whether we have a motion that
Well, let's just make a motion and I'll do it. So, all right. Do I have a motion to have me make public comment for that we recommend pickleball courts prior to the master plan being completed? Motion.
make a motion to continue to support construction of pickleball before completion of the master plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to liaisons. Oh, no, there is. Grabhorn update.
Grabhorn?
Oh, sure. I can give you an update on that. It's not much has happened since the last time we spoke. I know that the arborist has been to that site and is working on their report. Then the wetland biologist visited the site last week and is working on their report. I'm waiting to get ETA from the consultant. It should be within the next couple of weeks. Once that happens, then staff will take time to go through those reports, meet with the consultant, and get them started on conceptual design, at least the first one. As going back to the recommendations from the GPAC to City Council about the Grabhorn property, those two about having an arborist look at those cedar trees, as well as a wetland biologist examine with a finer tooth comb the Grabhorn property. We had those before the consultant begins any design work, because those two factors could impact what that design looks like. That's where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Last question is, as far as goal setting for the next year, is the goals for the city to try to do a grant, state parks to do something with that? I hope that's on the, it's critical.
It was not mentioned in the council's goal setting, but I understand. I think a lot of future about the property from what we hear back from wetland biologists. Have to see on.
Just a minor clarification about the time frame for that a match that would be property purchase would be eligible. The total is 6 years. I think this was bought in, was that 2019? No, it was 2020, right?
2019.
Okay. So we've got until 2025 to put in the application, well, to complete that project.
What I'd say is right now, we still don't have a softball field in this town, and we don't have a soccer field for our kids
Right.
in this town, and we can study this to death, or we can build a park. And I know there's differences, but I just hope we can get past this. So, I mean, this is I mean, we talked about the trail. Anyway, I just, glad you guys are still working on it, but I really think it should be a priority for the community. I'll do anything I can to help you. All I got.
Any other comment on the Grabhorn parcel? Yeah.
So one more thing that came up in the whole GPAC coordination with the board. I don't know if you guys are aware that there's been a lot of discussion about the potential of building a turf field and really a nice complex at the. Got voted down. That
It's, what I had heard is that it was, the funding had been postponed a year. So it wouldn't be an immediate fund. That doesn't mean it was voted down.
but they did do a community survey. They had 633 people respond, which is tremendous for a survey of this community. 83% identified the need for a turf field. Many of them were supportive of their version of the fund. I just don't know if, kind of, since this topic has some momentum amongst the school board, if it's another opportunity to engage with them and try to talk about collaboration or coordination between fields and creating some sort of compact like other cities have for public. I don't know kind of where outreach to the public schools stands. Has there been any additional conversation since the GPAC activity?
We would have to ask City Council. I know that Council President Greisen is the
Liaison.
Council President Greisen is the council liaison to the school district. I'm not sure where her conversations are with the school board or what she's observed at their meetings. Would have to get back to you on that one. Or you can contact her directly or provide public comment at the next council meeting.
What's GPAC?
Grabhorn Park Ad Hoc Committee.
Oh, okay. All right.
We
It was a mouthful.
I do work in government. I do love acronyms.
So should I just reach out directly to
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, if you could.
Grayson?
Okay. Liaisons. So in the second page of our packet that we have tonight, this is a very outdated list of liaisons that we have, not liaisons, but community contacts that we've had. So for tonight, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I am looking for a volunteer who can begin to update this list. So I was hoping to not have anybody who's on the Earth Day Council do it. But if anybody else could begin to update this list, so that we can begin to have an outreach, community outreach document. Have any volunteers?
I'm sorry I missed last meeting. If you could just take 30 seconds to explain,
Oh, yeah.
and then maybe I'll do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
Understand what it is.
Of course. Yeah. So so one of our goals is liaisons. So it was suggested by Kim that potentially we don't necessarily immediately reach out and try to bring liaisons, but we initially begin with a community outreach document. So we have contact information for the main points of contact, and then we can go from there. So this document that we have is one that we created in the early days of the Parks and Rec Committee. So it's very outdated, but it's just a good place for us to start because it already has, oh, sorry, it's the second. So then once we have that, we can move on to the stakeholders and begin to add other people to that list. And then we can decide what we want to do with this list. Do we want to invite them to our meetings? Do we want to invite people to meetings who might be stakeholders in that particular meeting? Do we want to invite them to be specific regular liaisons? Go from there.
At our big Earth Day planning event. We had worked with a number of these different groups, either seeking sponsorships or participating. We did the grab horn. So this will be a useful list for future work.
I think it'll be very useful to have an updated document.
Well, I'd like to maybe a little help with this. Maybe the newest member, Mike, you want to tag team with me on this one?
Help you.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is Earth Day update. So in 2019, we had 150 to 250 people approximately in attendance. I don't know that we can necessarily plan for that many people, but that could potentially be what we see. We have a rough schedule. We know that it's going to be on Saturday, April 23rd, from 9 to 12, with kind of like the main event happening at Heritage Park. We will have 3 service events that we know of, with potentially the Northwest Trail Alliance also being there. At 9 a.m., we will have trash pickup. We'll be working with Solve and the Scouts. This will be at Chapman Landing and the Crown Zellerbach Trail. At 10 a.m., we will have either planting or non-native plant removal with Scappoose Bay Watershed Council. The park is to be decided. And then at 11 a.m., we will have a guided walk with Scappoose Bay Watershed Council again, location to be decided. We have, JJ has been working on securing donations and sponsorships. And we have a flyer out and we're going to be working on web content next. JJ, do you have any updates on sponsors?
I do. So as I stated earlier, I was able to rope in Columbia River PUD to give us product, and then have been working closely with the library in case the weather is inclement, where if people are sponsoring, they can set up tables and give out product as well. Means Nursery is on board, and they're going to be helping us with the children's portion, where they're going to provide seeds and little plants and peat moss. And then the kids at the library will, be able to plant some things and take them home. And then Means will also be providing product to give away for specific events or raffles or whatever you want.
And are you going to be able to work that from beginning to end to be able to collect that? Okay, perfect. Do you need assistance from Isaac for any of that?
Nope.
Okay. And then you're going to be working on web content.
I can begin to put some of that together. And what would be helpful is when you talk to those sponsors, if you can put their logos.
Working on that.
I also spoke to Alan. Is his last name?
Huel Soppel.
Okay. I spoke to him regarding, he did a self-guided tour of Scappoose for the Centennial. It was a great thing that he put on, and I don't know if it got nearly enough attention because it was really awesome what he did. But he had a document with videos, like a QR code that linked to videos that went to a YouTube where he did a specific little talk about each location on this single page flyer. So when I make I've already begun to work on the scavenger hunt clues, and my hope is that we can have a QR code that links to a couple of videos, potentially talking about issues around the environment that we specifically see in Scappoose, whether it's work that Scappoose Bay Watershed Council has done for the riparian zones, or the importance of scotch broom removal and what does that mean when that becomes so invasive, things like that. And then hopefully over the next year we can build on some of those videos next year. That is the other piece of what we're working on. Brian?
I know you had listed that there was going to be some prize thing, or I'm not sure what the event is going to be for that. Are you guys still discussing what the contest is, or?
Yeah, we're figuring that out. And then I'm also
Okay.
working getting food for volunteers.
Okay, all right.
So for the prizes, we're going to have everybody who turns in their scavenger hunt can be entered into a drawing for one of 3 prizes. The 4th prize will be for Google photo uploads. The person who does the most Google photo uploads based off of their time in the park has the opportunity to win that 4th prize. And people will be able to complete the scavenger hunt both on Saturday or for the entire week before. So that way, if they just prefer to do it by themselves and completely socially distance themselves, they absolutely can.
Okay, all right. I just wanted, because I think the Northwest Trail Alliance was willing to do the probably the club membership year thing. I just need to get some more info to them first to see if they're still willing to do that or not. So
That would
I
be
just needed some more
fantastic.
data too. Yeah, and then they do know about the Earth Day cleanup and stuff like that, and the person that usually is in charge of that knows. So as soon as she gets back to me, and then she'll figure out what they're gonna do. You post a link for that, sign up for that, I guess,
Perfect.
with their Earth Day event. So
I was just thinking about the schedule a little bit, and you have events from 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to noon. I think we should pencil in maybe an hour from noon to 1, specifically at Heritage, because I think the folks that are going to participate in the events are probably going to follow them around the city because they're in line, not concurrent. So telling the people who are going to bring tables and materials when there's a time for them to be here will probably help them as a quote unquote vendor understand how they interact and what their role is.
So maybe have it from 9 to 1. That sounds good. I think that makes sense.
An hour to just dedicated one-on-one time with.
Yeah. Okay.
Other potential sponsors that you might want to consider would be Lee County Soil and Water Conservation District. Nathan Herr, I think, is in charge of that. Nathan Herr.
Okay.
And he's, they're really engaged with the Watershed Council, et cetera, so they might be a positive. And then also Chip Bubel from OSU extension might be
Yeah,
another.
I've reached out to them.
Maybe, yeah. Those are just a couple of.
JJ, are you able to reach out to?
So on water, that's easy.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
We have any other questions or comments regarding Earth Day?
Just a question. So how are we going to get the word out to the public?
So we have website. We have
Like a new website?
what was that?
A new website or?
The page with the information, flyers that we'll post is, you guys have been great pushing stuff out on social
Yeah,
media.
it's already been on social media.
Um, and the app, are you gonna put something on the app?
So it's kind of like what we did for the 100 years, if we don't have a dedicated website. So we created a new Earth Day page on the city website. We don't have the concurrent like special like Facebook event page set, but we'll be pushing it out through the Facebook page, through the app. We now have a Nextdoor, which is going to come online here in a couple of weeks, well, hopefully within a week. Might have an Instagram by then. See how that works. Newsletter, the normal, the stuff we did for the 100 year, just a little bit scaled down.
Great.
And we still just need city council's approval. A sponsored event, or did that already happen?
So we spoke with the mayor. The committees are kind of his area. He's completely in agreement. This aligns with council goals. This is something that's happened before. And then on Tuesday, I've got a staff report before council speaking about events and social media. This is one of the items on there as more of an update to them. So I don't think that because there's no expenditures, there's not a lot of city staff time on this. It's more of an update about that this is happening again, something that we've done before, how it's going. So there might be feedback during the meeting. There might not be. I don't really know how that's going. But should hopefully be pretty quick.
I will be in attendance that night, so I can answer any questions as well.
And just as a note too, for anybody that does want to attend that, it's the very last item on the agenda. There's 7 or 8 different items, so we probably don't need to tune in until 6:30, 6:45. Probably 6:30 to be safe, but it's the very last item.
All right, moving on to signage. If everyone can turn to the last page in their packet tonight. This is an outline that I created. Coming from an article on essentially figuring out signage for parks. And I thought it went through a lot of really great topics. So I just created a little rough outline for us to begin the conversation of what we want signage to look like for parks. So the first one is just the goals and purpose of the signage system that we feel like are important. And some of the things that we have discussed are improved park visibility for wayfinding on like main roads, because many of our parks that are deeper in the city, it's difficult to find if you don't know that you're already looking for them. We want to encourage walking and bicycle riding to and from parks, and then we want to increase the visibility of amenities within the park. So the next stop in the outline would be identifying needs of signage based off of park goers, residents, and city staff. So I think the very first place that for us to start when we're looking at signage is to talk to city staff and see what their observations are. Some questions that I initially have are what parks are the most used? What parks are underused? What amenities are the most used? What amenities are underused? And do they notice people having difficulty finding parks in general based off of their observation? So starting with city staff, I think is probably one of the easiest places to begin. And then our next step will be to ask those same questions for residents and park goers. I'm hoping that the scavenger hunt, since there will be clues for every single park, and then we're also going to have a find a park button on the app. We're gonna.
Yeah, so that's been delayed just a little bit because as we got into the discussion, we realized that if we're going to dig into the app to adjust things for parks, we probably want to make that a package, see if we want to do anything else while we're making the request of the actual app developer.
Okay.
So it's in there as a bullet point, but it's kind of talking about how we want to use the app going into the future. As we discussed, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Really just a bunch, it's basically a link tree, and so how we want to actually use that to interface.
Excuse me, but, and Isaac, but at the same time, the website, those are just links to the website, correct?
Yeah, so essentially the app is just another way to get to the website. So really meant to, a couple purposes, but one is really meant to push out emergency and critical notifications, and then two, to get the information people want to see to them so they can get there efficiently. So how to pay your water bill, how to find a park. Right now it has a lot of links to other things as well that aren't necessarily top search or top interest. So looking at it as holistically, like, how do we want to use it? How is it going to be most efficient? What do people want? It's kind of where we're going to go with it, I think.
But ultimately, everything you do echoes to the site.
Correct. Yeah. So having the back end content up as well is also another aspect to the app, which is, we can do everything we want with it, but if we haven't been able to populate, like we had talked about, maps and things like that of the parks, it won't be as effective.
Does anybody have any comments regarding starting with city staff?
I made some notes when I looked at your list, but other than that, I mean, in terms of like data as to who's using parks, which parks get the most usage, we'll have to think a little bit about how to get some of that data. I think the one thing I that came to mind in terms of trying to gauge who's using what, I mean, events are easily measurable.
Yeah,
I mean, I like to think of these things in terms of what's measurable.
yeah.
Is it standing out there and pressing a clicker for every person that shows up at a park between certain hours? I mean, it's not feasible, at least not for city staff.
Right. So I have a thought with our with the scavenger hunt. I mean, maybe we could have a simple question on there like, hey, did you visit a park that you've never been to today? I mean, we might be able to collect some early data.
And actually, the next thing I was going to mention is a lot of this sort of data will be to some extent anecdotal.
Yeah.
Just in my years with the city, one thing I have noticed, whether it be like at the Sauerkraut Festival we did in 2019 or the 100-year festival or even Earth Day, I've had folks from the public say, oh, hey, we've been here for 5, 10, 15 years. I didn't know there was this little park down here. And so, those, again, that's anecdotal.
Right.
And that's a conversation I've had with a few residents. That's not really a measure of the norm necessarily, but it's noteworthy and it stuck in my mind.
Might be the place we need to start because it is not feasible for us to be tracking exactly how many people go to a park in a single day.
I mean, park reservations, you can measure those. Again, though, I mean, our parks are pretty open and it's not like Cathedral Park with competition for wedding photo space.
Right.
Verbiage. Verbiage is a measure of usage.
True. Wear and tear on specific assets within the park. So I would need to chat with our public works staff a little bit more about what they've seen, what their observations are, because I sit behind a computer 99% of the day. So I'm not out actually in the parks every day like our field staff are.
And what would the goal be? I'm a little confused.
Right. So we know that we would like to improve signage.
Right.
So what we need to do is figure out where and what signage we need.
Right. But so if we know what parks are being used or not used, would we then say that we need more signs to the parks that aren't being used?
So that's a question we have to ask.
Right. So or do we just make a holistic solution that says we need to direct people to our parks from the main roads and from park to park? But we could get a false, like everyone's probably heard most shark attacks happen in 4 feet of water or less. Well, that's because people only swim in 4 feet of water or less, not the sharks are only there.
Right.
So we could get a false positive of saying, oh, there's a lot of people that come to this park. Well, maybe that's because they live right next to it, and that's why it gets a lot of use. But the other ones are probably the ones that maybe need more signage. So I don't want to overthink this. We really just need great signage.
We do, but then also, we've discussed like amenities within the park. So that's another thing. Like, what kind of signage do we need? Do we need more maps? Do
And
we?
I would say, so with signage, I think one way to address the amenities with the park would be like on signs having some kind of QR code that somebody could just check up on their phone and the amenities are right there. So you can keep the signs pretty simple and really just direct people to stuff on the web or the city's website to get more detailed information.
Yeah. So those are
It's more wayfinding. So when in St. Helens, I think they've actually done a really good job of creating signage that's really more about wayfinding and kind of a destination. And obviously St. Helens has a beautiful waterfront, so they make their signs really attractive, but very simple. The beautiful waterfront's this way, and that has seemed to work very well.
So I think I agree. I think there are lots of ways that we can tackle this. And at no point do I think we need to look at this and say, well, city staff says that nobody uses Creekview, so we need 75 more signs to Creekview.
Yeah.
I think what we need to do is say, well, do people know about it? Do we need to signage there? If I'm not from this area, do I know how to access it? Do we need more information on our website about it? So we can look at this, we can still look at the data that we get holistically.
Well,
And-
and I also wonder too, are we going to have a city meeting? I mean, a citywide meeting again this year or
I mean,
no?
the annual town meeting?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. And Isaac, if you want to just
Yes.
speak on
You can
that
go
just
ahead.
a little bit.
So before I address that really quickly, I was just going to say one thing about the data collection you're talking about. You had mentioned earlier what the Parks Committee can do for the master plan.
Yeah.
Assuming it happens, the better data collection you do now, the better that's going to be going into the master plan work.
Yep.
These topics will come up again.
I think it's important data to collect.
Yeah. So having the best data possible is whatever happens between now and then, assuming that council approves it and it happens, having the best data is always going to be more important.
Well, and so my other thought on that was that what's great about the meetings are that they have these little clickers where they ask people specific questions and they actually get instant feedback.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's a microcosm of the whole city.
Right.
I think it's fairly representative. So including some of these things regarding parks, I think would be very valuable. And we did that with the master plan initially. And what we did was that in addition to the clickers, we actually had setups throughout the auditorium with one of the park members facing each park to answer questions. So people had to go and engage and check out all that information. And then they came back and voted on certain things. And it was really effective.
So the town meeting this year is going to be primarily focused around kicking off the 50-year plan, engaging with the public around starting to build the vision going into that. And so I think that for this year, what would be reasonable and achievable would be that we had talked with a consultant about potentially having some like booths, which would be a table for various departments at the city. So assuming that, Parks Committee wants to do this and assuming that they make a recommendation to council and council says it's fine, you could ask to participate in the town meeting in that way and we could space set up and you could ask some questions there. But right now, the vast majority of that meeting is going to be spent just on trying to engage with the public around the 50-year vision, get people oriented to it, start gathering data for that. Because that work, again, everything done in Parks Committee, everything done in economic development, it's all going to feed into there. Now, not sure there's actually agenda time for that, but
I think that's a great idea.
I think so. I think that we could use that opportunity to get a lot of data and talk to a lot of people. When is that?
that will be held on April 30th. Tentatively, right now, we're looking at about 2 or 3 hours, probably 2 for the actual session, maybe 1.5, likely between 10 and noon or 9:30 and noon, and then maybe some time before for the booths or time after for that. Still have to kind of run that with the consultant and actually get the agenda nailed out about exactly what timing is, but it'll be in that no later than the early afternoon.
And then are they going to have the
Clickers, yeah.
little clickers again this year?
We, those were donated to the city by Comcast.
Oh, that's great.
We have those. The consultant's figuring out how to work those in.
They do real-time smartphones.
Yeah, and again, if you have a booth, feel free to do whatever you'd like to have that kind of data collected. you could do that easily and collect that very quickly and efficiently. I know there's a lot of free resources for those kind of crowdsourcing data and
Okay.
word clouds or whatever.
Well, and the other thing too is, I mean, it is kind of old fashioned, but one of the other things you can consider doing is having a survey, a printed survey that you pass out to folks and say, hey, could you just fill this out and then turn it in? And that way it's not about having whoever shows up at your booth, which may be many and maybe two. But that way you can get it out to everybody and they can fill it out and then turn it in, and that would be great.
And on that note too, the city can help. Assuming this happens, we could print some maps of the parks and everybody's done sticker exercises, right? Write on a post note what you want, put it where you want it. And that would be a really good way to visually collect data for different parks.
Okay.
And there's a lot of interesting, innovative things.
Maybe the park committee could have a booth that kind of highlighted some of the parks and had a survey. That could be kind of a nice.
It is. I would say my first initial thought is that it is 1 week after Earth Day.
Yep.
So that is going to be, it's going to be a hustle for us as a committee. So there's just something to think about on how heavy we are prepared. I think it's a great idea. I think we should go ahead and do it, but that's just all just something to think about. We are going to have 2 very busy weekends.
Right, but I don't think it's going to be that much work if you just make it simple where you have a booth, have information, come up with a short survey that you pass out to people. If you're just looking for data collection, that'd be perfect.
I can help with the survey. If you guys give me questions, I can put it together. We can print it off here at the city. Same with the maps.
Okay.
We can get it to the point where just content show that.
Perfect. Okay, that sounds good.
That's the city role for you, is how we can help.
Okay, I think that would be fantastic. So should we make a recommendation? What would be our next step?
Let me get back to you on that one.
Sounds good.
Just assume it'll happen. I don't think that it wouldn't, but
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
So then our next steps for signage will be collecting data from city staff. I haven't seen your notes yet, so I'll check those out. And then we can do some light surveying at Earth Day. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to mention was in my notes, I put under signage. In my mind, when it comes to parks, there were 4 different types of signage that I thought of. One is your interpretive signage. That's your educational stuff that is usually on some sort of canted platform inside the park about a specific thing. You've got your wayfinding to the parks, which is in the public right of way, showing motorists, pedestrians, cyclists how to get to the park. There's your wayfinding signage within the park. And then there's your message boards, which aren't necessarily like the other types of signage, but it's a sign in that it looks kind of like one and you can post things on it. Again, I think that was a really good way. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but a way of breaking it down and seeing which parks, maybe one is wayfinding signage to
Right.
Veterans Park is okay, but not the case with another one.
Right.
I know our parks are very light on interpretive signage, if at all.
Yeah.
So-
Yes.
so just
Those are the things that we really, I think, need to be looking at globally for but also like not just physical signage, but are they able to navigate the app? Are they able to navigate Google? And do they have enough information on Google? Do we have enough exciting pictures?
Right.
I think this conversation is kind of global conversation for navigation. Okay.
Is there a timeline for execution?
So for actually getting signs. So right now we're in the discussion phase.
So I'd like to add that in the meeting, the team meetings that they were having last week, that they're discussing branding of Scappoose and being quite serious about an outdoor theme possibly being the branding of Scappoose. So, I think this would be great data to work into that, because whatever they come out with the branding, the look, the feel, maybe something that it says, should all be kind of worked in with this.
I agree. I think that if we could model our signage based off of a whole theme, I think that would be better. Great. So thank you for Paul and Mike for volunteering to work on the liaison list. We'll continue to work on Earth Day, but that is all, everyone. Have a good night.
Easy
easy.